This podcast is supported by MIDI Health. Are you in midlife, feeling dismissed, unheard, or just plain tired of the old healthcare system? You're not alone. For too long, women's serious midlife health issues have been trivialized, ignored, and met with a just deal with it attitude. Many of us have been made to feel ashamed or forgotten. In fact, even today, 75% of women seeking care for menopause and perimenopause issues are left entirely untreated. But here's the powerful truth. It's time for a change. It's time for MIDI. MIDI is not just a healthcare provider. It's a women's telehealth clinic, founded and supported by world-class leaders in women's health. What sets MIDI apart? We are the only women's telehealth brand covered by major insurance companies, making high-quality expert care accessible and affordable. Our clinicians provide one-on-one, face-to-face consultations where they truly listen to your unique needs. We offer a full range of holistic, data-driven solutions, from hormonal therapies and weight loss protocols to lifestyle coaching and preventative health guidance. This isn't one-size-fits-all care. This is care uniquely tailored for you. At MIDI, you will join our patients who feel seen, heard, and prioritized. You will find that our mission is clear: to help all women thrive in midlife, giving them access to the health care they deserve. Because we believe midlife isn't the middle at all. It is the beginning of your second act. Ready to feel your best and write your second act script? Visit joinmidi.com today to book your personalized insurance-covered virtual visit. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI, the care women deserve.
Well, if you're like me and you love to ride your bike, you're going to love today's episode, because the furthest I've ridden is 70 miles at one time. I did a race called Hotter Than Hell. Actually, not even a race, just a ride called Hotter Than Hell, which is one of the biggest bike rides in the nation. It's in Wichita Falls, Texas. It is a super fun time. I highly recommend it. But today we're going to hear something that is many, many, many degrees bigger than what I did. Today we're going to hear stories from a man who hit the road for an epic bike trip from Canada to Mexico down the beauty that is Highway 1. We'll hear about historic sites, wonderful people, and some scary moments on the road in today's adventure with author Cory Mortensen. Before we get there, let's be real. Most travel gear out there is just plain awful. And that's why we share our gear of the day at the end of every episode. These are pieces we've actually used ourselves. We're going to talk to Cory about some of his favorite biking gear today. They're often things that are, if they don't come from us, they come from people like Cory, from fellow adventurers, not from some sketchy Facebook ad. If you want tried and true gear that saves you money, makes your trip smoother, and helps you adventure smarter, check out our Amazon page at stackingadventures.com/gear of the day. You'll be supporting the show, and you'll set yourself up with some gear that's Crystal Joe-licious, as Crystal likes to say. Crystal is not here today. You're stuck with me, but we're still going to have a hell of an adventure.
Ready for adventure? From vacation to staycation, and from the mountains to the beach. This is the Stacking Adventures podcast.
Welcome back to the Stacking Adventures podcast. Every adventure has a story, and today we're going to hear a fantastic one from a fellow adventurer and author who did something that, well, most of us will probably never do, but I've always aspired to do big things like this. I'm super excited to welcome him to the show. He's a guy who's written a series of books about his time on the road. Cory Mortensen joins us. Cory, thanks for sharing your story, man. How are you?
Hey, Joe, how are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine, brother. I am doing so good. And I don't think I even told you when we first were emailing back and forth that my son rode a bicycle from Austin to Anchorage.
Austin, Texas?
Austin, Texas to Anchorage,
wow.
Alaska.
That's
they call
amazing.
It the Texas 4000, and they raised a bunch of money for cancer research. It was really cool. So he's got a story. That's what attracted me to you. But how did you decide, you know what, I got to go from Canada down to Mexico?
This particular trip is kind of reflection of my first trip when I was 30. I took a 2-month leave of absence and I decided I was going to bike from Minneapolis, Minnesota to California. And with absolutely zero training, with absolutely no preparedness, I brought 4 tubes thinking that was 3 tubes too many. Like how many flat tires would one acquire along the way to California?
You told me, by the way, Cory, or you wrote in this book, you said you've learned along the way that there's never such a thing as too many tubes, right?
Absolutely not. Yeah, as a matter of fact, when I was preparing for this trip, I was going to bring my road bike, so like a racing road bike, and which would not have been the correct bike for this trip. And I was at the bike shop and I was purchasing about 20 tubes. Because I was like, for my first episode, the first time I ever done anything like this, I was like, yep. And then he happened to have this gravel bike in there, and I threw my leg over it, and it was tubeless tires. And I said, oh, I'm buying this. This is the ride, because it was a little bit more solid, more durable for this type of a ride. So I've always wanted to do the Pacific Coast Highway, and what happened was my brother called me in April and said, he asked my nephews what they wanted for Christmas, and what they wanted for Christmas was to run a marathon with me, which I was not really excited about. I had run about 15 or 16 marathons, but I wasn't ready physically or anything like that. I said, okay, we'll do that. I said, they picked the marathon, and they picked one in Portland on July 4th. And so we went up there, and my wife was in Scandinavia countries, I think Norway or Sweden. And she was there for 3 weeks. And so I was home alone, getting into trouble. And I said, I think I'm going to bring my bike with me and bike the Pacific Coast Highway. So I literally texted her, probably the marathon was on July 4th. I think I texted her on July 2nd. And I said, hey, babe, won't be home until August. See you then. What
did she say? Because I read this, Cory, and I thought, what would Cheryl say if I just said, hey, Cheryl, love you, babe. I'll see you at the end of summer.
Well, I tell you, she's special. She just sent me back. She said, all right, have a great time. Love you. Be safe. And then later I arranged that we could meet, as you read in the book, I arranged it so when she got back, we could meet in San Francisco. And then, so that was pretty much the entire planning of it. I have done a lot of long distance rides before, and I knew I wasn't going to be anywhere, so remote that I'm going to be worried about food or anything like that. And the Pacific Coast Highway, some of it's lightly traveled, but for the most part, I don't think you're going to be stranded, like you would be in maybe East Colorado on some rural road. So I didn't bring a lot. As a matter of fact, I wasn't going to bring my jacket, and because I was thinking it was July, how cold could it be? Well, I live in Arizona. I forget that it gets cold in other parts of the country. And so I wore my jacket every day until I got to Santa Barbara.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so that was pretty much it. I had 2 pairs of bibs. I had a T-shirt and shorts for after the ride, some flip-flops. And that was my after the ride day. I rode about 6 hours a day. I was wearing my cycling gear, and then I had a helmet, credit card, bike lock, some tools, and and a couple of tubes, some bike tubes.
You write at the beginning of this book, I thought this was very poignant, that part of this ride is about just staying young mentally, staying young physically, and really kind of fighting off this ogre that's coming for all of us, Father Time. I'm 57 years old. I'm about to run my last marathon, by the way. Just my back's not going to have any more of it, so I got to go to the bicycle myself more often. But for you, this is about staying young, and you said you have 3 rules for staying young.
Yeah, boy, what were they? Hang out with people older than you. I hope you have them.
Don't look in the mirror.
There was. I don't remember the third one.
Ride your bike.
Yes. Ride your bike. Yeah. It was, and I never look at mirrors. It's like, who is that old guy in the mirror? It just freaks me. And then when I look at my friends, I'm like, God. I was telling my wife, I said, God, we have a lot of old friends. And I'm like, well, they're.
There's that study, I think they said that like everybody has this age that is less than them. And for me, if you ask me what age I am, like my initial gut reaction is probably like 38. I would think I'm like in my head, I'm about 38, about 20 years younger than I truly am today. You write this too. not just about getting older, but about the ride. You write early on, experience has taught me that plans rarely survive the road. Because I want to ask you about planning for this, but flat tires, arthritic knees, mechanical failures, unpredictable weather, and loneliness all lurk along the way. I think we're all wondering, like, how do you handle a flat tire, Cory, going down a busy road like Highway 1?
Yeah, that does get tricky. I mean, I think, and I don't know who, I'm sure some people in your audience are cyclists and have experienced that. It's nerve-wracking for sure, especially if there's no shoulder, and you just have to deal with it. I think it depends on where you're at. There's a section on this ride. I just did it again actually this summer or a couple months ago, and it's a big climb up to Canyon City, Oregon. And there's no shoulder, and then it's a mountain, so it's like literally cut into the mountain. So if something were to happen, I don't even like biking it, much less thinking about getting a flat tire. So you have to work it out.
A friend of mine, when I started cycling, and he was kind of teaching me how to go from just casual cyclist to try to do more. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, "What if you get hit by a car?" And Roger said, it's not if, it's when you get hit by a car. He said at some point you're going to get hit by a car. Did you have any close calls along the trip?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a couple of sections. It's a great ride, and I think people who drive it, who are locals, know that they're cyclists. And there's some really actually wonderful little features. One was when you go through a tunnel in Oregon, there's a button that you push and lights turn on to let cars know there's a cyclist in the tunnel. So that was, when I saw that was nice. But I've on this ride, there was a couple where I could feel the wind, brush over the helmet pretty closely, and that's more likely a distracted driver, because and then the lumber trucks, those were the most terrifying, because some of those roads are so windy. They're doing what they do. It's not their fault. It's just that they're doing what they do, and all of a sudden there's some Yahoo on a bicycle doing 15 miles an hour.
Yeah, he doesn't got a lot of room either.
He doesn't have a lot of room, and there might be a car coming the other way. And so it's, as I get older, when I was younger, when I did my first trip, I didn't even wear a helmet, and I didn't even think about it. And I actually drove that route a couple of years afterwards, and I looked at my wife and I said, I can't believe I biked on this road like for 4 days. Like, I would never do that today. And now I use Google Maps, because you can like literally do a street view. If I'm planning a ride and I'm like, no shoulder, nope, I'm not interested. Yep. But this route, there's a lot of no shoulders. So yeah, just getting
there at the beginning of this adventure, finding your way to the place where you're going to start. You have two choices. You're going to go all the way to Vancouver and then come back, or you're going to stop early and get there. You take the Amtrak to get there. That sounds like taking the Amtrak sounds like, Cory, it was a hell of a lot of fun. And that I'm saying that completely sarcastically.
Really? I actually enjoy the Amtrak.
I do too, but I'm talking about this specific trip because you write that there's some kids playing games with their eye things, as you call them, and you're just trying to get up and get away from these kids because, of course, they got the volume at full blast or whatever, and they're sitting right across from you. And you wrote there are things that make us a society. You don't clip your toenails on a plane. I've sat next to somebody that did that too. That's the grossest thing ever.
Unbelievable.
You corral your grocery cart. You don't use the express lane with more than 12 items. I've had 14 before. You hold the door open for people behind you. You keep your kids in check in public. In this case, volume off on their damn eye things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. To that point, that was not ideal. I actually went to the viewing car and, and watched nature go by. I mean, it's a beautiful ride from Portland up to Seattle, or where did I go? Bellingham. Yeah.
Yeah, so you decided to stop before Vancouver. You didn't cross into Canada.
Yeah, I had my passport. I was ready to go, but I was, the hotel in Vancouver was like $500 versus $170, and I wouldn't get in until midnight. And so my mind's, the way I think about that is like, if I don't get in until midnight, then I'm just going to sleep on a bench in a park someplace because I'm not spending $600 or $500.
Me too.
For a few hours. Yeah, hard pass. And there was nothing else I could do. And And it was like, I'm riding from the border. That's my plan. So the biggest thing was like trying to figure out how I was going to get from Bellingham to the border. And it turns out there's a great bus system in Northwest Washington. So I hopped on she gave me the senior citizen rate, which adds to the whole aging thing, because she's like, it's $1. And I'm like, $1? That's the senior citizen? Oh.
Salt in the wound.
Man, it's like, was she being nice, or does she really think this? Then you start thinking about that for 15 minutes on the bus.
Where did you start the ride then?
Blaine. There's a park called the Peace Arch Park, and it's kind of a no man's land between Canada and the U.S. And there's a big, beautiful arch there, and that's kind of where you lean your bike against the Canada-U.S. post, and then then you just start riding. Just head south.
Do you get any feelings, though? I know that you stopped for, you took a picture, you talked to the park ranger a little bit there, but do you get any feelings before you start on something that big? Does it just feel epic, or are you like, let's just go?
I've done a lot. I shouldn't say a lot, maybe 6 or 7 long distance rides. And now it's just like, and this ride, I did something I'd never done before, and I booked my hotels because I didn't want to carry gear. So I booked hotels, motels, and cabins or whatever it was. And so I was just like, okay, it's just a 70-mile ride today, and fortunately I was lucky, like this entire ride, except for one day, I didn't have any rain or wind. And so it was just like, you couldn't have asked for a more utopic, so there was nothing in my mind other than I knew I was going to write a book, which I've never ridden my bike and taken notes like at the same time for a book. And so that was interesting, because then I would actually stop more often because I would see something that I found interesting, and it might not have made it into the book, but it just kind of gave me pause. And like, I was more attentive to a little statue that had was a memorial, or even the names of highways, dedicated to people. And I started being more cognizant of that, because it's like, there must be a reason why this highway is dedicated after this person. So who was this person? And then you become more curious about stuff. Otherwise, normally I would just be biking, listening to a podcast or something.
Well, it is fascinating to me too, Cory, because, usually even on a road trip, you're moving from point A to point B so fast that you don't have that much time to contemplate this one little spot that I'm at. But on a bicycle, I mean, everything is so much slower that it really makes it easy to think about where I'm at right now and what the historical significance of this particular place might be.
Absolutely. And I like history, as you probably noticed in the book. So I like to kind of get into the weeds about if I come across a historic marker and jot that down, or even was just in Omaha. And I have a special fondness of Omaha now that I've biked across it. But there was times where you're like, oh, here's the Anderson house from 1832. And you're like, when you're driving by, you just see this like rubble. But when you're biking, you go, why did the Andersons stop here? And it's probably because their wagon wheel broke, and they were like, okay, we're home, kids, get out and find some stones and let's build a house.
That's all she got.
That's all we got. And so, yeah, I don't know, kind of then becomes a little bit more, is romantic the right word? I don't know. You become really into the mythology of everything, the history, the mythology of it all.
I just think so we did a road trip along the Oregon coast this summer, riding part of the same stretch that you rode on your bicycle. I've also done the 17-mile drive before. So we've done different parts along the coast. Did you have one area that was really a favorite? Do you have a favorite day?
I think the most surprising day, I mean, they were all great days. There's a part of the highway where you're inland, so you're like inland for about 2 or 3 days, so you don't see the ocean, but you're in the redwoods, which was really surreal. But I wasn't prepared for it. But it was, as you're going south and you're south of Seaside, Oregon, there's an epic climb. It's the first climb that you basically come across on the ride. And when I got to the top, you look down on the town of Manzanita, Oregon, and I was just blown away. Like, I was like, I've been to Big Sur and that part of the Pacific Coast Highway. I had never been in Oregon, and I was blown away by Oregon. Like, if I was ever just to do any section of that again, like I told Kate, my wife, I said, if you ever want to do 7 days, we'll do just the Oregon coast, because we can do she doesn't like to go as long as I do, but it's like we could do 50 miles a day. There's all the great seafood, but the scenery is amazing.
That's what I think. With all you must have eaten at some great restaurants as well. I'm
pretty cheap, so no.
Yeah, but they don't have to cost a lot of money to be a lot of fun or nice dive places.
Sometimes at the end of the day, I was like, first of all, I wanted to get my notes down. I wanted to get my thoughts down. And so that was my biggest priority. And a lot of times sometimes the seafood came to me. There was a couple of places, but I met these two guys at a cabin, and I was really feeling non-social. And we had a duplex type of cabin. And I looked at the innkeeper, and I'm like, dude, like of all the places that you have open, you put me right next to these two guys. And these guys were road tripping proper. They had a hibachi, they were beer, vodka, weed, everything, and they were ready to engage. And I was trying to not drink at all on this trip. So I was like, oh, so we hung out, and it was one of the most fun nights I had on that, outside of riding. And they had gone down and picked up a whole bunch of oysters, I think, from some guy in a van. And they were cooking them on a grill, and they were the biggest oysters and best. And they just squirt the salt water right in your mouth I only needed 2, and that was all I ate for like 2 days was those 2 oysters, because everything I passed was closed. I missed my opportunity to eat. So I was like, but that was some of the best seafood I had was these oysters. I don't know why. Maybe it was just because it became a really fun night,
I was just thinking that, Cory, that I remember asking this guy that owns a wine shop here in Texarkana. I said, why does Italian wine taste so much better when I'm in Italy than when I buy it from your shop? Like, it just tastes different. He goes, because you're in Rome.
Right. And you're paying half price.
Exactly. You're paying less. You're enjoying the scenery. You're enjoying the people you're with. Like, it's not about the wine. It's about everything that comes with it. And maybe the best food you ate because just the fun night.
Absolutely. Yeah. I tried to relive a situation where my wife and I were in South America for a while, and I was really excited to get her to Ushuaia. It's one of the most southern city in the world. And when I got there the first time, I was 32, 33. And I just thought it was magical. And maybe it was because the effort it took to get there and all this. And when I went there with her, I was like, this place is a like, we don't need to stay any longer than a day, babe. Like, I don't know what I was thinking.
Isn't that funny when it's not at all what you remember?
Not at all. And I couldn't find the hostel. I couldn't find anything. I was like, let's get out of here.
We are at the halfway mark, adventures of today's discussion. And at the halfway mark, Cory, we always take a pit stop where we introduce a new gear of the day. And this one's going to be, I'm just going to hint at it. Cory, I don't want you to guess what this is.
Okay.
But this is a new book that just came out by an author about riding a bike from the Canadian border all the way to Mexico. I'm not really sure what it is. Cory might not be sure what it is. At the end of today's show, we'll tell you what it is, but I'll let all of you adventurers think about it for a minute, and we'll be right back. All right, Cory, we're not going to make you guess what the gear of the day is today.
Thank you.
It is a book written very well by an author about going from Canada to Mexico. You had a couple other pieces of gear, though, that you mentioned in your book, and I'd like to ask you about these because a lot of our fans are cyclists. You really go on and on about this hand pump that you've had for like 20 years and how much you love it.
Yeah, it's, so my first bike ride, my first long distance one, the one from California or Minneapolis to California. Like I said, the longest I had ever ridden prior to that was maybe 15 miles. So, the fact that I thought I could ride 100 miles the first day, I actually brought my running gear so I could go for a run afterwards. That's how wrong I prepared myself. But I had this one bike pump, and I don't know why I bought it, but it's a Toe Peak Road Morph. And this is actually my second one because the first one just kind of blew out. But I absolutely love this pump. I don't know what to tell you guys, but it's like I use CO2 cartridges occasionally, but this thing, it's got a gauge on it. I know it's not practical. It's big by today's standards. It's got a little foot pot stand. It's just wonderful, and I can get it up to 105 psi. It's the best pump ever.
It's awesome though when you go back to buy the next one because you like the first one so much.
Well, and I have the little thing on my water bottle cage that I know it'll snap into.
Oh, sweet.
So yeah. I'm not, for somebody who likes to do adventures, I'm not one for change when it comes to equipment and stuff.
Well, you know what? I mean, what we found after a year and a half of doing this show is when you find great gear, like hold on to it. Because as I mentioned in the open, there's so much bad gear out there. There's just so much stuff that you're like, why? My mom just went on this river cruise to Europe with us. And my sister gave her one of those neck pillows, those big, huge neck pillows. And I told my mom, I'm like, I don't think you're going to use it. I took it the first time. I thought it was a great idea. It's a horrible idea. And I think my mom left it in Europe.
Left it at a hostel or something, donated it to the cause.
Yeah. It's just like, there's no way, she got enough tchotchkes. She didn't want to bring it home with her. You also packed, by the way, a book, Bill Thorness's book, Cycling the Pacific Coast, the complete guide from Canada to Mexico. Would you endorse that book? Would you recommend it?
I would. Let me just tell you, if you've never done anything like this, I would recommend it. It's a good day-to-day, how to prepare. He throws in a lot of what I mean, since I have some experience behind me now, as do you, I don't need to be told how to lock up my bike. But those are the little things that you forget, right? Like when you get someplace and you want to go in and go to a grocery store and you're like, oh, shoot, I didn't bring a lock. I mean, it's a really simple and easy thing to forget. I forgot chain lube. And so the one day it rained, I was like, how could I forget just a little bit, something so simple? So yeah, it's a great book for someone who's a novice and wants. I don't really like my handheld that much. I like to just kind of make stuff up as I go, and if I feel like I want to take a left down a dirt road, I'll do it. But it's a good book for someone who's preparing to do the Pacific Coast Highway and wants some good information. I bought the book because I thought it was. Because I didn't read the description, and it was the only book I could really find on biking the Pacific Coast Highway, and I wanted inspiration because the last book I had published was like 2 years ago. So I was like, well, how does somebody else describe their surroundings and what do they focus on? And every writer's different. I've written a couple of books by people who rode the Pacific Coast Highway, and what was important to them and what did they focus on. I kind of go on ramblings. But I also like to see how did they describe going through Oregon? What was their takeaway? Like you're asking me questions about it, and it's like, yeah, what was your takeaway, and what did you find magical, if anything?
You also fell in love with your bike. I don't know, Cory, how many people, I can count on one hand the number of people I know who have named their bike. You've named your bike.
First time ever. I never done that. All my friends do it. I mean, I used to mountain bike race. They all had names for it, and I was like, that just seems ridiculous. And it just kind of felt right. I don't know. I felt like it needed a name, even though I think I only mentioned it once. It's not like I talked to it, but sure. I think that came up. There was this other author. Her name's Riza August, and I picked up her book. She wrote the Pacific Coast Highway with she did it with a tour group, but she did it because she found out she had a brain tumor, and she wanted to, she wasn't going to let the brain tumor win. So she actually names her brain tumor. So her brain tumor has a name. And that kind of, after reading it, and I was emailing with her, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to name my bike finally, It's like, if you can name your brain tumor, I'm going to name my bike.
Well, so what'd you name it?
Oceanus, which is the name of the only person who was born on the Mayflower. Technically, that person doesn't have a home, right? They were born on the ocean. And so I thought, my bike shall never have a home. It's just kind of, I don't want to have a home. but I'm married, and I would rather be just. And my wife is really cool. Like, I think she's ready to buy a Sprinter van and travel around. And if we want to sleep on the beach, we sleep on the beach and in the mountains. But until that time comes, I have a home. Yeah,
it's so funny how people are so different. I thought a few years ago I didn't want a home, so we sold everything. And we became homeless on purpose. And Cory, it lasted about 7 months. I hated it.
What did you do? Did you go someplace? Like, did you backpack around or?
No, we ended up just living in different communities, just in different places.
Oh, okay.
And because of what I do, I can work from anywhere. So as long as I've got my equipment, we can just live out of the back of our car. And we had some friends that we initially, just to get our feet wet, they were going on road trips, or they were, going on long trips, and we take care of the cat or the dog or whatever.
Oh, I see.
And so we were babysitting other people's houses. And a few times we Airbnb'd a house that we found a really good deal on. The one in Stowe, Vermont that we had was great. In the middle of summer in Stowe, it was fantastic. It was just, I loved all these places. Palm Springs, California, I thought was really neat with all the mid-century modern architecture. So I like the travel. I like the slow travel. I just needed a place that was mine.
Right.
Just these routes. So
I think to go back on what I just said. So when my wife and I got married, I just sold my business. So we moved down to Dallas from Minneapolis, and I had spent 2 years traveling around the world before I started my business. So that was totally that bike ride to California. I ended up not going home. I just left my bike in California and traveled around the world for 2 years, totally clueless of what was going to happen the next day. And then I started a business accidentally, and so I sold it. And we moved to Dallas, and I said, babe, I really need to go and travel. I need to wander. And so after my 2-year contract was up, we literally did sell everything because we were living in an apartment. The last day, I'm writing a book about it as we speak, but the last day in our apartment, the last thing to go was we moved the mattress out to the bin in the garage. And we got in the little Mazda, and we spent a month just, camping in the United States, and then we spent 2 years down in South America. Then when we came back, we weren't supposed to be here, but then things changed, and I convinced her to move to Phoenix, and now we're regular adults.
And lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
I would ask some questions about further down Highway 1. You mentioned the redwoods, but I'm wondering how it was different when you go into a big city. Really, I think you've got the LA area that you have to bike through. You also have San Francisco. How are those sections of the trip different than the rest of the coast?
San Francisco, that would have been the first big city, and so I was halfway through. So that was about 15 days before really being in a big city. And again, the best part of this was I was just so lucky with the weather. So I think I left. There's a town, I can't pronounce it. It's on the coast, just north of Bodega Bay, and so I went into Bodega Bay, and where they filmed The Birds. So everything has birds on it, right? The movie The Birds. And then I biked up into Petaluma, and then from Petaluma, all of a sudden the city starts to unfold through suburbs. It's just a beautiful part of the country, and just in general. So you're just smiling the whole time, and then all of a sudden you see a random deer, and then a Maserati, and all of a sudden I was on a proper bike path, and I could see San Francisco, and I stopped in Sausalito, and there was so much energy there that I was just excited. I was excited, and I had never biked over the Golden Gate Bridge before. I'm terrified of heights, so that was just absolutely thrilling. And but we only spent one night there. That's where I met Kate. She flew in, and I had rented her a car so she could drive and meet me every day at another hotel. But it was really great. But I think I was just excited because I got to see Kate.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, I had been to San Francisco so many times before. It's just kind of it's like another city. And then LA was biking through there was great, except for the San Francisco Marathon was happening. So all the roads were closed.
Oh,
so
no.
it was kind of tricky
right over the bridge too. I mean, because they run over the Golden Gate Bridge, don't they?
Well, fortunately I was already past that. It was just trying to get to the ocean.
Gotcha.
And all the roads were closed, and so. But I mean, big deal. I sat there and cheered people on, and was really happy I wasn't out there running.
I ran a half marathon there. My son was trying to run the marathon. And it's funny because, you think San Francisco, you think it's a hilly course, and it really isn't. You run down along the waterfront and it's just flat. And then by Ghirardelli Square, you take a left. But dude, when you go uphill, like it is 2 blocks, like straight up, horrible hill. And then you kind of come back down. And then just before you get to Golden Gate Bridge, you're the big park there right by the bridge. Yes. Thank you. So you go up and up and up there too. And it's just, so there's only a few hills, which I found surprising, but they were killer hills as you would expect.
Right. Well, and any hill that presents itself when you're enjoying a nice flat course is a big hill, right?
Absolutely.
It's like, where did this come from? Well, and it was just this much on the map when you were looking at the elevation before you signed up.
Well, and that is a question for you. When you talked about being excited to see Kate, there's this theme that you have that goes all the way through the book, which is this contemplation and you call it loneliness at the beginning, that sometimes the loneliness is really piercing, but it also seems like you welcome that, Cory, like you really you're hoping for a little bit of loneliness.
My first book is called The Buddha and the Bee, and it was that bike ride again from Minneapolis to California. And in the first 4 chapters of that book, I was so depressed because I was so alone, and I wasn't alone in anything exciting. I was alone in cornfields in southern Minnesota and, South Dakota. And I was like, I was questioning I'm like, what? And by the time I got to, when I was biking through the desert, I just, all of a sudden and it has affected me to this day of who I am, but that trip totally changed my life. But it was like, oh wow, like now I know who I am. I mean, loneliness is weird, right? Like you can really embrace it or it can destroy you. It really can, especially if you're not used to it,
Sure.
And I mean, just think about like, what's the first thing you do when you wake up nowadays? You probably pick up your iPhone or your smartphone and you're connected. Even though you're not talking to somebody, you're connected, right? This was, when I did that bike ride, it was 2020 or 2000, 9/11, when it was 9/11, 2001. So I didn't have a phone. I wasn't connected to anybody. I couldn't just go to a computer and email my friends and, and get connected. I was like in my tent somewhere, after biking all day and just questioning this whole existence. And so that's the hardest. I think that's the hardest part to overcome right away, especially if you're doing a solo. Well, for me anyway, it is, you're literally on your own. You're with your thoughts, and your thoughts can be really great, and they can also be your worst enemy.
Do you find though that is also tied to metabolism? I just remember a road trip we took with my family in 1986 when I graduated from high school. And I remember we had the same damn fight every day at 3 p.m. And I realized it was because we were all hungry. Like every single day, our family would start to fight. And I'm like, oh, we just got to eat sooner.
Yeah, I guess I don't think that, I don't see that connection.
No,
I don't really eat a lot, actually. Like I looks like I do eat a lot, but when I'm biking or doing, that's my biggest problem. Like when I used to race is my nutrition, because I'm not hungry. So like after biking all day, I have absolutely no appetite. So I kind of force myself to eat. And so no, I don't think that was the problem. Yeah.
So it's not metabolistic. It's just that day, that time, that.
It depends on what thought decides to creep in there.
Right.
There's some of them that, this is one of the reasons why I don't really care for swimming anymore. And I enjoy swimming. It's like, because there is nothing, you can't even put on music, right? Like it's just you and in the water. And man, once I get a bad thought in my head and happens, that's a 30-minute miserable swim, and it happens on the bike too. Like at least with the bike, I can put on a podcast or I can put on some music or something to distract me. But I don't know. And then just being lonely I like it. It's like, I like it when my wife goes out of town every once in a while, and have the house to myself. And I think she likes it just as much. As a matter of fact, a couple months ago, I was going to bike from Seattle back to Phoenix and to kind of revisit some of this route. And I got hit by that atmospheric river. So I was done by the time I got to halfway through Oregon. She kept on asking me for like 2 weeks, when are you leaving? When are you leaving? Like, you have to leave. You have to get out of the house. I need you to go.
Isn't that funny? Because clearly you guys have a fantastic relationship, but there's times to be together and there's times to be apart. I'm wondering about other people, Cory, along the journey, because you mentioned those two guys and that great dinner that you had along the coast. Can you tell us another story about somebody you met along this ride that, you'll never forget?
I met this daughter and father, and where was I? Was I maybe in California? Anyway, they were clearly doing the tour. They had, the bikes were matching. They had the same exact air mattresses. It was really kind of cute. And my jacket, my cycling jacket has Wesley. I started a bike company 20 years ago, and it was named Wesley after my dad, who had passed away. And so when I approached him, he was like, "Oh, my name is Wesley." And I was like, "Oh, that's great. That's cool." And so I started talking to them, and I said, "Well, what are you guys doing? Like, are you guys going all the way down to Mexico?" And he said, "No, we started in Canada, but she's got to go to school at San Luis Obispo. And so I'm biking there. We're biking her to school. She'll get there on orientation." Wow. And she's be a freshman. And I thought, no, there is no cooler way to show up at university for orientation your freshman year than saying that you biked with your dad from Canada to San Luis Obispo. And I thought that was kind of a neat story. That it was cute. And then I ran into a friend of mine I hadn't seen in a few years, and we biked from Monterey down to Big Sur. And so that was really, really great to, it was one of those friendships that you don't necessarily have to say hi to each other for years, but he just texted me out of the blue and he said, "Hey man, I see you're biking the coast. I live in Monterey. Can I bike with you for the day?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I'd love it." And so we were both starting our businesses at the same time. So that was kind of our special connection.
That's cool, because that's just a gorgeous part of the ride too. Just an incredible part of the ride. And you got this old friend with you. Like, what a cool part of the ride.
And he was the one who was not afraid to put the hurt on me. He was really strong.
You're like, "Hey, you don't got to go every day, jerk."
Yeah. I'm like, "Dude, I got gear."
That's right. Before we say goodbye, take us to the end of the road. How was it? Was it like finishing? Was it emotional when you reached the Mexican border?
The book is called Middle Miles for a reason, and it's because everybody can say they started something, right? And then we give them credit. We praise them. "Oh, I'm gonna start training for a marathon. I haven't run the marathon yet, but I'm gonna start training." That's so wonderful, right? Everybody gives you great praise, and you might not even do it, but you already got the kudos. So, right, you have this excitement, and then you get to the finish line. You graduate from high school or college or whatever, and it's like everybody's. But it was like how you got there that's the important part. So that's kind of where I came up with the name Middle Miles. Was like it's kind of. We're all in our middle miles of life, right? So until we die, we're in our middle miles. It doesn't matter if you live to be 99 years old or what, and that's where the exciting stuff is. And I started a business, and nobody wants to hear about you sleeping in a hammock and dumpster diving for boxes because you don't have any money. They want to hear about, "Oh, you started a business. Oh, and you sold the business." Like, right? And to me, it's the middle. So when I look at finishing something like this, I don't know if you laughed or paused, but I think, okay, well, that's it. Nobody cares. It's like there's no medal, there's no news crew. It was just a busy border crossing with everybody doing their own thing. And then there's some dirty, sweaty guy on a bike, looking for somebody to take a picture for him standing next to the sign, and the ride in was like, I didn't know how to approach it. Kate was staying at a hotel. And so my plan was, bike the ride, take the train back up, and meet her for dinner. And so, I took my time. I wasn't in a big hurry because it was the last day. And, it's surprising. I'm really curious. I would love to meet somebody from out of the country who has done this ride and finished that route, because from San Diego to the border is not, it's not at all attractive. There's a lot of homeless. You're on these back paths that are very unkept. If you're intimidated, you might be frightened. Then you start getting into the last city where everything's covered in barbed wire because you have the border crossings and stuff. So aesthetically, it's not It's, then you just drop down to a bus station basically. And it's like, oh, I couldn't even find a bar to find some strangers to celebrate with tequila. I was like,
it's so
like,
anticlimactic.
Who wants to hear the stories of my greatness?
That's right.
Yeah, so I got there. I had these two guys make a photo. I hopped on the tram up to San Diego, stopped and had a beer at a brewery while I waited for Amtrak to take me up, and then Kate and I went and found some seafood in Oceanside. And it's when I finish this, and I don't know how you feel like when you run a marathon. It's like some people say that's the last time I'm running a marathon, or they go, okay, what's next? And so for me, it's more like, what's the next thing I want to do?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's past.
Yeah.
It may not sound that way because I wrote a book about it. So, it's not like that wasn't the point, is to brag. It was just like, now that I write books, I enjoy, I think people get something out of it. But yeah, I don't really, when I finish stuff, it's like, or even start stuff, it's just like, okay, all right, first pedal stroke. Got a long day ahead of me.
Get it moving. It is interesting because it did seem, as you were writing, that there's this little anticlimactic feeling, that it's and maybe again a little bit of sadness, just that it's over, that those middle miles are over. Not that the finish is here and there's celebration, but that you're just enjoying the ride instead of worrying about the finish line. And now it's back to the next thing.
There's I wish I knew what somebody had mentioned it to me once when I was doing that bike ride from Minneapolis to California. I stopped at my cousin's house, and she was dating this guy, and he was a big adventurer, dude, off the charts. He said, well, are you excited about being done? And I said, no, actually. I said, San Francisco's 2 days away, and I'm depressed about it. And he's like, it's like an adventure, whatever you want to call it, put adventure in front of it or whatever. It's that depression that you get when you come back from a big epic trip or do something epic. And it's like every time I do something, it's like, it's worse. It's like I got to be back on the road moving, doing something. And that's the hardest part, is I get depressed,
I think that's so natural. That's so, yeah. I don't know. I think it's universal, and I can't explain it either, but I get done with something big and, and I'm about to do my last marathon, as I mentioned. And I just want to enjoy every mile of that thing,
Right.
And I know at the end I'm going to be depressed because it's the last one that I'll do. But and don't get me wrong, I'm not unhappy because, like you, dude, marathon's a slog. There will be a piece of me going, I'm glad I'm never doing that again.
Yeah, that's my last 12-mile marker.
Right. Exactly. Man. Well, thank you for sharing the story. Before we go, it's time for our big Gear of the Day reveal. Our Gear of the Day, you can find it all at stackingadventures.com/Gear of the Day adventures. And today our Gear of the Day is a book about a man who rode solo over the course of a summer from Canada to Mexico. And it's written by this crazy guy named Cory Mortensen. I don't know, Cory, if you've heard of him.
Never. No. Sounds like a nutcase.
I laughed. I loved how thoughtful it is, how every day it's like we're in your head. I loved the fact that it was a diary. But I also love the history that you mentioned that's along every piece of the path. Like, you've stopped to tell us a little bit about what's important about this stretch of highway. Thanks to this gentleman, this stretch of highway was named whatever. And,
right.
Some of the places where I laughed, just some of the little pieces of humor. We talked about Amtrak earlier. One of my favorite, one of my favorite lines in the book was something about, Amtrak marketing it as European travel. And you're like, well, based on where Amtrak really is, it's more like Eastern European travel.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
Everybody's got a dream.
Right. Yeah. Hold on to the dreams. I didn't say this. I do have to tell you, going back to the loneliness part, and I won't talk anymore. There was one thing that was really special to me, and it happened completely out of the blue. And it was every chapter, I think, starting at about chapter 4 or 5. My buddy Kevin, who I haven't seen in a while, he lives in Minneapolis, and he's just one of those rare friends. And out of the blue, he just started leaving me these messages every morning, and I start each chapter with those messages. And I was like, I couldn't wait to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to listen to that message. And to me, that was really I thought, I don't know, it was really warm. I mean, you know, when you get older, you start losing friends and stuff. And when you have somebody like that who takes the time, the first thing in the morning is to share, just root you on. That was my favorite. That was my favorite day, part of the day.
It is so awesome. And I like how you start off with a quote from Hunter S. Thompson too, about it's not about what happens, it's about what you do with it. Like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That quote definitely sets the tone. Middle Miles is available, I'm assuming, Cory, everywhere?
Yeah, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, on my website, www.thebuddhaandthebee.com, all one word. And all my books are there as well.
Everyone link to it on the show notes. It'll appear in our Gear of the Day as well. Cory Mortensen, thank you so much for sharing your adventure with us.
Thank you,
Many
Joey.
more, my friend, many more.
Yeah, for sure. And good luck with that marathon.
Thanks.